Hello guys, so this is the case studies for Unit 2. I've chosen cases 3 and 4. Now I'm going to start reading case 3 for you and then I'm going to go on with the explanation of why I think I chose my answer and why the other answers do not match. So case 3 says a 5-year-old boy is brought to the pediatrician's office for an annual visit. The mother reports he has been a sticky infant and often appears drowsy. She also has concerns over her son's persistent thirst and frequent urination. Blood samples are taken for insulin measurements at time 0 and 1 hour after a glucose loading test. The results of this testing are illustrated in the table below. So the table shows the serum insulin levels at 0.8, 6 plus minus 25, 40 plus minus 11. So the baseline blood samples 1 hour after glucose load and the patient control is what I've just said. So the question says, what is this information likely to suggest about the underlying biochemical basis for the patient's symptoms? And what would you predict the patient's fasted blood glucose levels to be given his current condition? For example, it says above normal range, within the normal range, or below. And then we're supposed to list 2 enzymes that are likely to be active in this individual's condition. So starting my case studies, going off from the graph, the lab report baseline blood samples of the child is 0.8, which is very less compared to a normal value of 6 plus or minus 2. So in this case, it would be below the range. And within 1 hour after the glucose load is given, her child is having serum insulin 5, which is very low compared to a normal 40 plus minus 11, which again is very below the range. With the clinical features of the increased thirst, which is also known as polydyspia, and increased urination, which is polyuria, these suggest that the child has diabetes type 1. So why I think it is diabetes type 1? So if you do the fasting blood glucose test with the oral glucose tolerance test, the child's glucose level would be above normal range. With the various enzymes will be active in this, which include hyperglycemic state. And in glycolysis, the reactions catalyzed by hexokinase, phosphoructinase, and pyruvate kinases are virtually irreversible. This is why these enzymes would be expected to have regulatory as well as catalytic roles, and that is why I chose diabetes type 1. So going on to case 4, this is the reasoning. Let me read out the case. So a previously healthy 2-month-old female presents with jittery spells several hours after breastfeeding. Her mother reports she has not given the baby anything to eat other than the breast milk since birth. The baby has only recently been sleeping more than 2 hours between feedings, and that's when the mother reports these symptoms started. Laboratory results are consistent with hypoglycemia, which is low blood glucose, but are otherwise unremarkable. Epinephrine is administered, and there is no increase in blood glucose, but there is an increase in blood lactate, which is a hint is given. Think of what pathways would be activated by this hormone. Physical exam reveals a liver edge 4 below the right costal margin. Percussion of the right chest and abdomen confirms hepatomegaly, which is the enlarged liver. Blood glucose levels increases after breastfeeding, but she cannot maintain the blood glucose levels within the normal range during fasting. Based on the information above, which of the following is the most likely diagnosis of this patient? So there's choices given to us here. So we have hereditary fructose intolerance, galactosemia, glycogen storage disease, and glucagon 6 phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. So the reason I chose my answer, glycogen storage disease, which is the inability to use glycogen, is because I went through each symptoms of each of the choices given, and this option suited the diagnosis of the patient the most. So the symptoms for the glycogen storage disease include the enlarged liver and kidney, which the patient did show, low blood sugar level, high level of lactate, fat, and uric acid in the blood, impaired growth and delayed puberty, increased mouth ulcers, and bone thinning. So this best suits all the symptoms that this patient has been seeing in himself. So why I do not think it is the other choices, I also listed the symptoms of each choice. Galactosemia, the symptoms were loss of appetite, vomiting, and that did not show in the patient. Next was hereditary fructose intolerance, which symptoms of it was nausea, vomiting, gas, abdominal pain, chronic fatigue, malabsorption of certain nutrients. Also, this patient did not show any of these, so it cannot be either of those. And then the last but not least, GGPD deficiency, which the symptoms include dark urine, yellow skin and eyes, and pain in the abdomen and back. Also, the patient did not show any of these symptoms. Therefore, we go back and when we look at the symptoms for the glycogen storage disease, this one suits the patient the most, and that is why I chose